What's up, guys? Swift here today talking about the future of the Chicago Bulls. I want to give my take on recent moves such as trading Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey, drafting Buzelis, why the Bulls need to tank, letting DeRozan leave, and the future of this franchise. Let's go ahead and get right into it. The Chicago Bulls franchise is at a crossroads. After running the NBA in the 1990s, this team hasn't been back to the NBA Finals since Michael Jordan left in 1998. It's been 25 long years, and the most recent roster is undergoing a major reconstruction and potentially a full rebuild. This Bulls team could have looked drastically different the last few years, but a similar story played out here as the team's playoff hopes were again crushed by a devastating knee injury to our star point guard. No, I'm not talking about Derrick Rose. I'm talking about Lonzo Ball, who signed with the Bulls in 2021. That team came out of the gate hot and was even in first place for a brief stint. They looked so exciting and like a team capable of actually contending. Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, DeRozan, Alex Caruso, Patrick Williams, and Vooch. That team was dangerous, high-flying, and fun to watch. But the run was extremely short-lived, as Lonzo Ball got hurt before we even reached the halfway point of the season, playing just 35 games and then missing the next 2.5 years. It was just another disappointing era of Chicago Bulls basketball, and honestly, this season was hard to watch. But are things finally heading in the right direction? The Bulls traded away fan favorite Alex Caruso for exciting young guard Josh Giddey. That is the first move I want to discuss here. I know how good Alex Caruso was and what he meant to these fans. I love what he brought to this team. His energy, his defense, and his hustle were just contagious. But come on, guys, let's be serious here. Caruso is over 30 years old, and at his absolute best, he's a stud defensive player who's limited offensively. In his 7 seasons in the NBA, 2023 was the first time he ever averaged even 10 points a game, barely cracking the mark at 10.1. Yes, he's one of the best stoppers in the NBA, but he's eligible for a big extension, and the Bulls were never going to win a championship with him on the roster. Trading him for Josh Giddey, that's how you kick off a rebuild. He is such an intriguing player, a guy who's a nightly triple-double threat at just 21 years old, a 6'8" guard who can play anywhere on the floor. He has fantastic court vision and is an excellent passer. He's also a great rebounder. He can play defense and handle the ball. He could play point guard, shooting guard, or small forward for the Bulls. But if I had my choice, I would want to unlock his playmaking potential at point guard, something he wasn't able to do with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander while on the Thunder. His biggest weakness has been his shooting, but he's just 21 years old, and his three-point percentage has improved all 3 seasons in the NBA, so there is upside there. He's a legit triple-double threat every single night who can score, who can pass, and rebound. But the biggest complaint on this one is that the Bulls should have got a draft pick for Alex Caruso. What most of those people fail to realize, though, is that Giddey is just 21 years old and probably has more upside than most of the players picked in the top 10 of this year's draft. I really like this trade. Next up, let's talk about Buzelis and how the Bulls might have actually hit a home run in this year's NBA draft. This one was pretty unexpected. In a year when the draft was lacking top-end talent, paired with the fact that the Bulls got unlucky in the lottery, falling down to the 11th pick, but I believe things turned around when Buzelis was somehow still on the board. A guy unanimously viewed as a top 5 talent in this year's class. He spent the 2023 season with the G League Unite. He put up 14.3 points per game and added 7 rebounds and 2 blocks to go with it. The 6'10", 19-year-old grew up in Chicago and wanted to be a Chicago Bull. I thought he was the best pick for this rebuild, and I'm glad the Bulls front office felt similar. At just 19 years old, he has a ton of room for growth, and he has big upside, but he should take a few years to reach his potential. He fits very well with the Bulls' timeline of a rebuild, and even has potential to grow even taller than 6'7". He shot 44% from the floor and 27.3 from downtown for the G League Unite and added a 67.9 free throw percentage. Buzelis also has some upside as a ball handler and a passer. His overall upside is just tremendous. Before joining the G League, he was a two-time Gatorade Player of the Year winner, doing it in both Kansas and New Hampshire. As a senior in high school, he shot 43% from three and led his team to the Final Four of the Geico Nationals. Buzelis is a high upside pick who probably needs a few years to reach his potential, but honestly, I think he was the best pick for the Chicago Bulls, and I think he really helps key off this rebuild. Let me briefly explain why. This team needs to do what Ryan Poles did, tear down the roster and rebuild. Yes, I loved Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and Lonzo Ball, but this team tried to build around them and they failed. It's now time to start over, and honestly, they need to tank to get this rebuild right. One of the biggest reasons is their first round pick next year. If it doesn't land in the top 10, that means it goes to the San Antonio Spurs. We are not in the position to be giving first round picks to the Spurs. We're in a lot worse position than they are right now, so it makes way more sense to tank and keep a top 10 pick in next year's draft. Even though I do love the trade for Josh Giddey and the draft pick of Buzelis, I don't think either guy is ready to lead this team to a playoff run. So if you can make a couple more moves that I'll get to in just a minute, I believe this team will be a young, exciting roster with the potential to tank and be really good in just a couple of years. So that leads me to my next topic, the next big step of the rebuild, and that meant letting DeMar DeRozan leave. Now this one is tough. There's absolutely no way to sugarcoat this. You cannot look at this roster and say that this team is better without DeRozan. He was an absolute warrior for this team. He played hurt and he gave his all to this franchise. I really wish the Bulls would have been able to win while he was here, but unfortunately his time here ended without a championship, and the Bulls wasted their best opportunity to trade him last year when he had value, and instead they let him hit free agency and included him in a sign and trade for Chris Duarte, backup guard. Nothing to defend about this move. This in no way made the Bulls better, but it is something they had to do. This team has to tank to land that top 10 pick next year. I believe it's the best way to go forward, even after re-signing Patrick Williams. That was still more of a bet on his upside than what he's doing right now. They re-signed him to a 5-year, $90 million deal and added free agent big man Jalen Smith for 3 years, $27 million. And when you pair those guys with Kobe White, Io, Giddey, Patrick Williams, Buzelis, and potentially a top 10 pick next year, you could have a really exciting young core of players. Now, that would probably mean it'll be 2 to 3 years before the Bulls are good again. They're kind of in a similar position right now that the Bears were in when Ryan Poles took the job. So AK and the Bulls front office still has a ton of work to do, including the biggest question, what to do with Zach LaVine and Vooch. In my opinion, I think they need to acquire some draft picks in those deals if they can, but they've kind of waited way too long here, and it's going to be pretty hard to get any kind of value from either one of those guys, even though they are good NBA players. That is the biggest question remaining, though. What to do with Zach LaVine, Vooch, and Lonzo Ball, who could potentially be returning this year. If the best option for this team is to tank, then they need to get whatever they can for Zach LaVine and Vooch, and then see what happens with Lonzo Ball, honestly. If he can return to the court and get some value, he could potentially be a trade chip as well. It is really sad that Lonzo never got a real chance with this team, but unfortunately his opportunity is probably over. They need to get any value they can for these players, preferably young assets or draft picks, and that will allow them to tank for 1 or maybe even 2 years. Unfortunately, that means it's probably going to be 2026 at the earliest when the Bulls start to turn things around, unless they somehow get lucky in next year's draft lottery. This is assuming they tank and are in the top 10. If they were able to somehow land the number 1 pick, there's a big time talent next year with Cooper Flagg and others. So maybe, just maybe, the Bulls can do what the Bears did, land that number 1 pick and turn things around a little bit quicker. Let me know if you guys want me to follow up with this video after the Zach LaVine situation plays out, and give me your thoughts on this Bulls team that is entering a full rebuild. What do you think they should do with Zach LaVine and Vooch? Remember to hit that like button for me, guys, and until next time, see red and bear down.